Oh, muted. Okay. Hello, and welcome to a stream in which I stream because I haven't streamed in a very long time. It's been almost like a month. Excuse me. But yeah, it's been like almost a month. And there's a reason for it because I just been making like Expedition 33 content. I just got back from Las Vegas earlier this week. I was there for EDC. I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh, NSP, you like EDM? Actually, I don't really listen to EDM that much. But instead, my girl likes EDM, man. So I went to EDC, and we had a great time. I got to see a very big Night Sky Prince fan, Afrojack, which was awesome. For those of you who are not familiar or were not there on that stream, which by the way, you should have been there on that stream because it's a fucking awesome stream. But we found out that the Afrojack, is like a huge Night Sky Prince fan, and he donated like 100 subs in our chat when we were streaming Rebirth. It was crazy. Huge FF7 guy. Had no idea. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go see this guy live while I'm here. And sure enough, he was incredible. It's a great show. So I'm glad that I went. I like Gablu like music mostly. I kind of do too. That's also why I'm a big fan of like the Nier OSTs. Obviously, I like the rest of the Expedition 33 soundtrack and just numerous other things that sound similar or adjacent to that type of music, where it's like very chill. As you guys know from listening to my coming soon, going live soon music, I typically like a lot of lo-fi too. Anything very slow, heavy bass, relaxing, has like an existential undertone to it. I love it. Yeah, Stellar Blade OST would be like another thing that I consider like adjacent to like Nier and Expedition 33's OST. That type of music is probably like what ranks the highest for me. So yeah, welcome in, guys. It has been a long while since I streamed. I think it's been like a little over a month. Like the last stream that we did was talking about like it was the Tabata and Guillaume Guillaume Broche interview, and that was good. Um, since then, actually, by the way, I've had the wonderful opportunity to speak to Guillaume and to speak to the developers at Sandfall. Wonderful people. You're actually going to see that video go live on Final Fantasy Union's channel, by the way, where me and Daryl got the opportunity to speak to Guillaume and the rest of the team. Clout Strife First Class, thank you so much for the Prime sub, dude. Thank you for being with us for 29 months, dude. I appreciate you so much for always making it out to streams. Since you last streamed, we got confirmation Echo the Dolphin is back. That's awesome. Cartel Dell, oh my god, thank you so much for the tier 1. Give us some interview spoilers. Okay. Dell, I can tell you that your question that you submitted did get asked and answered. So you have something to look forward to in the interview. And also, when you watch it, I'm gonna let you guys know right now that I was nervous and I was damn near about to shit myself. And they're just so cool. So if you watch it and you're like, NSP's like shaking, he seems weird, he seems anxious, like, yeah, there's a reason why, you know? So I'm scared. Leave me alone. I get scared, chat. I get scared. I'm like, what if people find out that I'm a degenerate fool? I don't know. There's always that fear. So couch potato, hello man. So anyway, that should be going live. I don't know when, but like I think hopefully soonish. And again, that'll be on Final Fantasy Union's channel. So I hope you guys look forward to it because we did get to we did get to chat a little bit about some cool stuff. And yeah, it's just really cool. They answered some really great questions. Unless Jennifer English. Wait, are we talking about like who's gonna win like best voice actor this year? No, I think Ben actually has like a really solid shot of winning or getting nominated this year. It's really tough because honestly, like in terms of the nomination, I could see I could see Ben getting it. I could also see Charlie Cox getting nominated or Jennifer English. I feel like it was really strong performances for all of them. Um, you could damn near nominate every voice actor in that game for performance of the year. Really, there really is just not a single week performance. Granted, they do have like a really small cast, but um, with a small cast of characters, they casted their voice actors accordingly for sure. So yeah, Charlie Cox, my goat, man, dude, it's kind of insane too to think that that's like his debut in terms of voice acting, to my understanding, because I'm like, God damn, Jesus Christ, so good. Damn, dude, you got a broccoli cut? You damn right, because I'm nutritious and I'm good for you. And the more of me that you have, the better off you are. So you're goddamn right. I am a piece of fucking broccoli. He's Daredevil, right? Yeah, he's Daredevil. What's your best KH memory? Oh man, like it's not even fucking close, man. My best KH memory by far was fighting Sephiroth in Kingdom Hearts 2 specifically. Now, the thing is, I never actually went and beat Sephiroth in Kingdom Hearts 1. I never did it. So, when we do stream Kingdom Hearts 1 on here, which, yes, we're actually going to fucking do. I know I talked about it before. I know I talked about it while finishing the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Hard Mode stream, which I also didn't finish, and we're 3 chapters away. And that was like 2 months ago, and I still haven't picked it back up because things got kind of crazy. But we are going to do that. I'm just waiting for Kingdom Hearts hype to be well positioned, and we're going to talk more about Kingdom Hearts hype in a second. But like, I'm just waiting for like Kingdom Hearts hype to be in full swing for it to like make the most sense to do it, and then we're gonna like we're gonna dive in. The HD fight for Kingdom Hearts 1 Sephiroth has broken AI. It's extremely funny. Oh man. So it's gonna be something I can cheese really easy. That's unfortunate. JD, thank you so much for the tier 1. Jesus Christ, dude, 64 months? God damn, dude, thank you for the support. What a fucking bro. Yes, we are gonna be playing KH1 Final Mix. What I want to do is I want to go through KH1, 2, and 3. Depending, we might touch Birth by Sleep. And I'm going to be entirely honest with you guys. Unless you get me in like the greatest Kingdom Hearts mood ever, I'm not fucking touching Rechain of Memories. And I probably am not touching Dream Drop Distance again. I'm sorry, but those games are low points for me. I can't do it. I can't do those two. I could probably do Birth by Sleep, but I can't do Dream Drop Distance again. I'm sorry. I can't do Dream Drop, and I can't do Chain of Memories again. And if I did do Chain of Memories again, it would be like the 2D. I'd have to like get like a Game Boy Advance emulator and do like actual Chain of Memories. And I know there's actual arguments for the Game Boy Advance version being better. It's been so long since I played either of them that I don't have a clear recollection of why that's the case. But I can tell you that with the Game Boy Advance version, at the very least, it looks better to me. Like, I really like the way the pixel art looks. So the isometric style just looks better because it's like it's really flat. I don't know how to describe it. Midnight Sapphire, thank you for the tier 1. Thank you for being with us for 45 months on a 44-month streak. Jesus Christ. Thank you so much. You've always really supported the channel. I appreciate you. I only completed the GBA one. It works great for the screen size. Okay, look. Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories on GBA was fucking awesome because it looked incredible, right? So whenever they did the remake for PS2, it was like these really flat box-like levels that looked like shit. And so purely on aesthetics, I preferred the Game Boy Advance version because I think the PS2 version, of course, it has like fully animated cutscenes and stuff like that, and that really does help the story. But from a play experience, from an aesthetic experience, the Game Boy Advance version kind of clears. So, I don't know. But I do want to visit Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3. 3 will actually be kind of interesting because I never finished all of the data fights. So that's actually going to be kind of like really fun to go back to and actually finish those. The reason I didn't finish it is because I'm going to be honest with you guys. My impression of base Kingdom Hearts 3 was so low that when it finally got good with critical mode and like with the actual data fights, I was just like, I was so over Kingdom Hearts 3 that I just didn't even want to play it anymore. I was just like, man, what the fuck ever. I don't care if it's like, you know. So yeah, I just watched other people do Yuzora, if I'm like 1,000% honest. Like I was just like, I can't do it. So for me, that's gonna be like brand new content. So I'm actually really excited. What Disney properties are you hoping to see in KH4? I'm gonna be real, they're somewhat arbitrary to me because I know it's going to be like a lot more of the CG stuff and a lot more of the live action. I kind of think that the era of Disney that I cared about was already kind of explored in Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. And also like in like some places like 3, like I love Big Hero 6 and stuff like that. So I'm actually kind of at a loss for like what they could do world-wise for me in Kingdom Hearts 4 because I genuinely don't know. I really don't know like what modern Disney stuff I even give a fuck about. You know what I'm saying? Because you know Disney has been on like a creative decline, at least to me, for a really really long time. And this is not like culture warrior stuff. So if you're gonna go there, fuck out of my chat, please. I just think that they just don't make good stuff anymore. It's just not compelling. There's just not many Disney things I can think of. Like, I'm trying to think right now. Treasure Planet, or Atlantis would actually do it for me. If we see live action Lion King or Little Mermaid in KH4, it's gonna suck so bad. Okay, yeah, that's like a hard line for me, right? Like, if we get like live action Disney stuff, because you know Sora is real now, he's realistic, and so the chances of us exploring live action Disney stuff is like really possible. I do not want to go to live action like Lion King. Oh God. No way. No way. No way. That's like a hard fucking line for me. Um if we go back to Lion King or any of those types of worlds, I would want for them to have the classic Kingdom Hearts style that they had in like two, or not like two, but like I guess like an updated version like three, and not like, oh, we're gonna do the live actions. I'm worried they'll plunder MCU. I do think that well, not necessarily MCU, but Marvel something is going to be in KH4. Marvel something or another is going to be in KH4. That's fine. If they can get Marvel in there, like, then yeah. Star Wars and Marvel are kind of like, I mean, that's the big thing, right? I think that's like the most hype generating thing that they could possibly do. Anything other than that, I don't. I really just couldn't tell you like what I would want specifically. Um, Moana, I don't know. I think that'd be cool. Yeah, because there's been a lot of debate about the Kingdom Hearts 4 art style too, which I've also found really interesting. Because it is a lot more realistic. I think a lot of people are kind of put off by the realism, and kind of the counter argument has been that when you go to the different Disney worlds, he'll probably look different, or he'll look more like classic Sora. I do think the intention though is that he's going to look realistic 90% of the game. So I do think that, you know, the whole point of the way Sora looks like in his base form is that for the most part he is going to look like that in most worlds, and that is how it has been in most of the games, right? Like Sora looks like how he does in like the base normal world that he does in most of the game, and then there are certain worlds that are exceptions. So I think that like if you don't like the aesthetic of Kingdom Hearts 4, then you're probably not going to like the aesthetic of Kingdom Hearts 4. If you don't like the way he looks in Quadratum, chances are you don't like the way that he looks throughout most of the game. That's what I think. I do think that you'll see like a Kingdom Hearts 3 looking Sora throughout it, but I do think for the most part he is going to be realistic for most of the game. Now for me, as a Final Fantasy guy, I'm okay with it. To me, that shit looks like Versus 13. I think it's awesome. I think Kingdom Hearts 4 looks cool. But again, you're asking a Final Fantasy guy. So of course, I think the game is cool because it looks like Final Fantasy. But I actually do understand the people that like love Kingdom Hearts' like specific art style, and they look at it and they're not satisfied with it. I actually really do get that, because I do think that Kingdom Hearts in general had a really cool, unique art style that really separated it from other JRPGs. I feel like there's no other game that I can really point to that quite looks like KH has a very distinctive art style. So I understand how moving away from that can be like upsetting to a lot of people. So I do understand like why some people kind of walk away from it and are like, boo. Personally, I like it, but yeah, I understand the argument for why some people are like, I don't like it. I do think the pre-KH3 aesthetic had more charm, but I gotta see what they do with KH4 first. Yeah. So far, so good. Again, I like it because I think it looks like Final Fantasy Versus 13. So I'm getting the thing that I've always wanted. But I do get the arguments from people who would be like, it doesn't look like Kingdom Hearts anymore, per se. Even KH4 is almost closer to the bouncer now. That's funny. Wait, why are we talking about BBC? Not that BBC chat, the British one. I'm just looking in Twitch chat. The 2D art for KH4, KH4 Store still looks like KH, but not his 3D model. I mean, his 3D model with great intent looks like Noctis. Like, he is meant to look like Noctis on purpose. So, yeah. Someone in chat earlier asked, do you think we're going to see Noctis in Kingdom Hearts 4? And I'm like, brother, the real question is how many Noctises we're going to see in Kingdom Hearts 4. At this point, we need like a term for like Noctises plural, Nocti. We're going to see many Nocti, a large number of Nocti within Kingdom Hearts 4. Because we're going to have Sora, who is Noctis. We're going to have Riku, who is Noctis. We're going to have Yozora, who is literally Noctis. And then, I don't know, dude. Like, how fucking crazy would it be if, like, actual Noctis just shows up? And he's just like, what are you guys doing? Like, what the fuck's going on? Why have you guys been in my closet? As a lifelong KH and FF guy, I like both art styles. Benjamin totally sucks. You don't suck. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. And yeah, me too. I like both styles, and I like Kingdom Hearts 4 style. Like I said, I get why some people can be kind of on Kingdom Hearts 4 style, but personally, it's pretty good for me. And that is why I don't like Versus 13 as sort of taking over KH. I don't want it to become into the Noctis verse. That's also like a really strong argument that, again, while I'm like personally into Versus 13 and I'm like totally cool with like Kingdom Hearts 4 becoming this meta commentary on Versus 13, again, I can see outside of myself on this topic, and I can definitely understand why for some Kingdom Hearts fans that might suck, right? Because now the thing you like is kind of becoming a commentary on like a totally fucking different thing, right? And it's kind of like, I understand that argument because it's like, I want Kingdom Hearts to be about Kingdom Hearts and not about this thing that happened to you on this completely other video game series that, you know, is only tangentially related to it, but not like, you know, directly. So I you know, that argument totally makes sense to me. And I'm not here to really push back on that. Again, I just personally really like that, and I'm personally really into it. But anyone making that argument is technically not wrong at all. That's a fair, sound argument to make. I just really fucking want Final Fantasy Versus 13. And I like Kingdom Hearts too. So, you know, again, for me personally, it's awesome. I'm cool with it. I'm excited for it. But yeah, I totally get where someone might be coming from on that. Was Versus 13 originally supposed to connect with Kingdom Hearts? It's never been explicitly said that Versus was supposed to connect to Kingdom Hearts. However, it was kind of implied by Nomura all the way back when he was working on Versus that he essentially wanted to kind of merge the storylines at some point, where he was saying that essentially that he named Noctis and Sora with great intent. One is Sky, one is Night Sky, and that eventually he would reveal why he named the characters this way. So he was already kind of teasing that eventually Kingdom Hearts would, you know, be our Versus 13. He was teasing that Versus 13 would be like part of Kingdom Hearts, right? Like Versus and Kingdom Hearts would meet up at some point. So I think it was always meant to be that Versus and Kingdom Hearts were going to collide in some capacity. But here's the thing, right? That idea no longer worked once Versus 13 no longer became a thing and Final Fantasy 15 became something wholly different from what Versus was intended to be. So my theory is, and I have videos out on this, my theory is essentially he came up with Yozora in order to fill in the blanks for what Versus 13 Noctis is. And through Yozora's story, we are actually going to get what it means, or how should I say, through Yozora's story, we're going to get a peek at what Versus 13 was meant to be. And this is going to be Nomada's way of telling Versus 13's story. He's going to tell it through Kingdom Hearts. Obviously, we're not going to get the whole thing, fully unfiltered, but we're going to get pieces of it that allow us to infer what would have happened in Final Fantasy Versus 13. And I think that's also what makes Kingdom Hearts 4's narrative so exciting. Is because it is actually going to kind of give us pieces of a story that we never actually got. Mini Noctises would be Noctises? How do you say that? Noctises? That means that night, as in multiple nights, could also be Nocti, as in mini Noctises. IDK, it's Latin, it's a dead language. Yeah, I'm going to go with Nocti. I like Nocti. Josh Z, thank you so much for this super chat. It's always baffled me when people say that FF has become KH, because I really think that KH has become more FF-like with wild plots and crazy stuff. I think the first game is the most Kingdom Hearts. Thank you so much for the super chat. I think that Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy have always kind of been the same thing. Like, that's my take on it. Like, I think that they've never, like, really actually been that different. Right? Like, I think if Final Fantasy, if a single Final Fantasy game had 10 games, it would eventually just become Kingdom Hearts. If that makes sense. I think that's actually why people say that the re-trilogy is so KH-pilled, because we've had a Final Fantasy game go on long enough to reveal that if a Final Fantasy goes on for long enough, it eventually turns into Kingdom Hearts. What kept Final Fantasy from being Kingdom Hearts is that they were one and done games, right? You did one and then it was over. But when it goes for 10 games, then it becomes Kingdom Hearts. Squall UA, thank you so much for the tier 1, man. I appreciate it. Happy Friday to you too. Yeah, Final Fantasy 13 trilogy would be like a great example, right? Like, by the time that we got to like Lightning Returns, we were so KH build like on that game. 7R, right? Like, people are like, why is 7R like so KH like? I'm like, well, one, it's like multiple of the people who created Kingdom Hearts as well. Nomada, Nojima. And then two, I'm like, if the story goes on for that long, eventually, because Kingdom Hearts didn't start out like the way we think of Kingdom Hearts now either, right? Like, the original Kingdom Hearts was like very much kind of like a Final Fantasy game. And then as it kept going, they kept coming up with lore. And that's another thing too about Final Fantasy games, is that if they get enough sequels, time travel always shows up. And eventually that happened with Kingdom Hearts 2. Like, always. Always, always, always. So if you get enough, and then that could potentially be happening with like 7R as well. We still don't know. Kingdom Hearts started out like Final Fantasy, then became Kingdom Hearts. Yeah. No, because like, okay, like realistically, Kingdom Hearts 1 to me was a Final Fantasy. Straight up. I 100% consider that a Final Fantasy. Like when that game came out and I played that game, I was like, this is an FF. And it's just, there's Disney characters. There's Donald Duck, but this is a Final Fantasy. And broadly speaking, if you're 30, you know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. Like I know that like the people like who are like 22 or some shit, they're probably like listening to me say this and they're like, what the fuck are you saying? If you're like 32 though, you're listening to me and you're like, I know exactly what the fuck you're talking about, brother. Like that is so true. On God. Um so yeah, it just depends. I'm 24 and I get what you mean. Okay. Good. You should petition to get Dissidia Duodecim on PS5. Thank you so much for the super chat, Kevin Vu. Um, yeah, I've never. It worked for Max, right? Because didn't Max like petition to get like what was it? Was it like a port of something? Was it Marvel versus Capcom? One of them, some game worked for him. I want tactics on PS. You're gonna get that. You're gonna get that. There's like no question on whether or not you're gonna get that. 27 and get what you mean. Okay, I didn't mean to cause the age generational divide. There are younger people who understand what I mean. Okay, I would consider Kingdom Hearts like the first like Kingdom Hearts as we think of Kingdom Hearts that like felt totally separate from Final Fantasy's identity to me was like Birth by Sleep. That was when I felt like Kingdom Hearts like branched off into like an entirely different thing that was not Final Fantasy, if that makes sense. Like that was when I felt like, okay, this is like definitely like its wholly own IP now. But KH1 and 2 felt like to a lesser extent too, but more but holy fuck, one KH1, oh my god, that fucking FF like 100,000%. I think maybe it's because when they got, I mean, Birth by Sleep didn't really have that many Final Fantasy characters. It was mostly just Zack as well. But then I also just think too that like when I played it, I just felt like that's when they got into kind of an identity that felt so it felt removed from the kind of FF-ness that kind of preceded it. It was Dream Drop Distance that did it for me. No. I completely get that. Like Dream Drop Distance is like when it like fully said that like nope. Kingdom Hearts is like Kingdom Hearts. KH1 low key the best game ever made. Take me back for yeah. KH1 was like fucking magic, man. You know, I always feel like a boomer, um, reminiscing too much about the SquareSoft era. But fuck, it was so good, chat. God damn, it was so good. It was so good. It was so good. Fuck, it was so good. And there was just game after game after game of just where did we go wrong? CEO Yoichi Wada. Like if you're asking guys like an objective question, that's where we started to go wrong. I mean, if I could point to like a single thing, Yoichi Wada was like that's where we started to because Yoichi Wada was basically the guy who got in there and essentially said like he and these are his words. It's like we need to start exploiting existing Final Fantasy games. So, the first thing that he did is like, okay, we need to make 10-2. We need to make and not to say that 10-2 is bad, but it did put them off to a bad trajectory. Um give me 100 sequels? Yes. So he's like, okay, we need to make the compilation of Final Fantasy VII. FF7 is still so popular. Let's make as much FF7 shovelware as humanly possible. And the thing is, with the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, I don't think it was wrong of them to make more FF7, right? Because I think it was just smart business sense, like to be like, okay, maybe we'll make more Final Fantasy VII stuff. But the problem is that they didn't really have a quality filter for a lot of the FF7 stuff they were making. They kind of just wanted to shove out as much stuff FF7 as humanly possible, right? And they didn't really stop and ask themselves, well, are we making something that lives up to Final Fantasy VII? They were kind of just like, no. Anything called Final Fantasy VII will fucking sell. Put that shit out. And so, even with Dirge of Cerberus, really, right? Like, Dirge of Cerberus, like the way that game got started essentially was that they wanted to make a third-person shooter. Like, they wanted to make a shooter, and they were like, I have no idea how we're going to sell a shooter made by Square Enix. And then they're like, we got it. We're going to make it a Final Fantasy VII game. And originally, they had thought about using Barrett, but then they ultimately went with Vincent. So, yeah, that's what they were doing at the time. In Final Fantasy VII, it was so popular at that time. And people crave that remake that they were just like, fuck, I don't care. It's got FF7 on it. I get to see Cloud and at the time what felt like HD, you know. I'm just using that as a way to point to the highest quality graphics that, like, you know, could be offered at the time. And yeah, people fucking ate it up. I'm people, by the way. I ate it up at the time. But, you know, also, too, during that era where people were craving a remake of Final Fantasy VII, Crisis Core was coming out, Dirge of Cerberus was coming out, Advent Children was coming out. We didn't think, actually, that there would be a remake of Final Fantasy VII, right? So I was happy getting my compilation slop because I didn't think that we'd ever actually get Final Fantasy VII remade. So I was like, okay, I'm like, if you're giving me compilation slop, this is the... I'll eat it up, right? Because I was just so hungry for anything FF7. And then, you know, 10 years after the demand for Final Fantasy VII Remake is when we got the announcement for Final Fantasy VII Remake. And yeah, had they made Final Fantasy VII Remake back on PlayStation 3, it would have sold, you know, 10 plus million easily. It would have been, you know, the biggest console selling game for the PlayStation 3. Now, here's the thing. I didn't want a fucking Final Fantasy VII Remake from that Square Enix, because that Square Enix would have made the worst, most horrendous abomination of Final Fantasy VII humanly imaginable. Remember, you know, this was the Genesis era Square Enix that absolutely, you know, would have made way more crazy changes than all the stuff that we see now in the current remake that some people love, some people hate. But the types of changes that they would have done for that version of Final Fantasy VII Remake, I don't think would have been good. I think they would have been absolute garbage. Like, I think it would have sucked. So on one hand, from a business perspective, I'm like, oh yeah, they should have made FF7R back then. But then from from like a gamer perspective, I'm like, dude, it would have sucked so bad. It would have sucked so bad that we would have been asking for like Final Fantasy VII Remake, but for real this time. Whispers is still pretty bad, though. I mean, I'm not a fan of like the Whispers or a lot of the meta plot elements of the current remake, but it's still not as bad as it could have been, again, if Square did it back then. And ultimately, from a gameplay perspective, I would still say the Re-Trilogy has been like a massive success, which I don't even know if the gameplay of Re-Trilogy would have been good back on PS3, because that Square Enix was just like at its lowest point. That Square Enix, guys, that period of Square Enix was so bad that we're still technically recovering from that era. Like, we are still technically trying to get back on track from how bad the absolute damage that that era left, right? Because we should honestly be looking forward to Kingdom Hearts 5 right now and not 4. And part of the reason is because all the management and technical issues that happened that led to Versus 13 trilogy being delayed and canceled. You know, with 14 1.0, they were, oh God, dude. Like, and then the fact that they had to make Luminous for Final Fantasy 15. And then, you know, even the fact that they had to make yet another new engine for Final Fantasy 16, right? Because Crystal Tools and Luminous both kind of shit the bed and didn't end up being used. So you can see that, like, the fucking domino effect of, like, how badly them fucking up during that era. You know, bad leadership, the tech issues, the consequence that they had from that era still is being felt like a decade later. It's fucking ridiculous, man. It and that's also a thing too, is that you know, reputation recovery is also a thing. Right? Like, I know a lot of people that were like, well, 16 and Rebirth were great games. How come they didn't, you know, sell in bigger quantities? And here's the thing, right? I'll give you guys like a great example of this. If FromSoft announces a new game right now, I know some of you don't play Souls games, but for those of you who do, if FromSoft announces a new game right now, like a new, like, single player FromSoft game, you're going to go buy it. Almost without question. Don't even need to see what it is. Why? Because if you are familiar with FromSoft and you play their games, the association, the brand association with FromSoft being so high quality and always being a great experience that is unlike anything else in the industry, you're going to go buy a FromSoft game, right? Capcom also has that same sort of brand recognition right now, right? Which, by the way, again, this is why Square Enix should be looking at Capcom more than any other, you know, developer or any other publisher, is that Capcom had a similar situation, right? Where Capcom also had its golden era, and then Capcom shit the fucking bed. And then Capcom rebuilt themselves, and now Capcom has that, oh my God, it's a new Capcom game, you know? Cap Gods, right? Brand sentiment is so important for game studios, man. Just look at Bungie. Right. Because it's what allows you to have, it allows you to take a leap of faith. So, like, you know, you don't know if you're going to get your $70 worth from a game, $80 maybe now, $100. But when you have that brand recognition, you're willing to say, man, I don't give a fuck. I trust you. I trust what you're going to do. You're going to make it work. I believe you, right? And when you don't have that brand recognition anymore, people are a lot less willing to trust you, right? And so the problem is that, you know, with FF games, for example, now people are like, I'll wait and see the reviews. And I know that, like, I'll wait and see the reviews doesn't sound like a harmless statement. It sounds very benign. But it kind of shows from an established studio that, like, yeah, we really don't trust what you're putting out anymore. And that's been the problem with Square. And so, you know, That's why they can't just come out with like an FF game, even if it's broadly considered good, right? A lot of people did like 16. A lot of people liked Rebirth, right? But like the game's reviewed incredibly well. But it's not like if you were really burned from Final Fantasy 13 or 15, or just have seen Square flounder in other ways like Forspoken and Babylon's Fall and Avengers, then it's really tough to then be like, yeah, we're gonna like go and invest in this company blindly, or we're gonna follow everything that they do, or be really interested in whatever they do next. I think that's probably true for the dedicated Final Fantasy audience, but like, is that spreading? Are they doing anything to keep that sentiment growing? I don't know, Ryan. I've never played a Square Enix game I didn't think was a quality product. Really? Really? Okay. Objectively speaking, then I don't think you've probably, and I don't mean this in like a gatekeepy way or like a like you don't play enough games way, but like I don't think you've played enough Square Enix games, because there are definitely Square Enix games that I don't think can be called a quality product. Babylon's Fall, brother. Chocobo GP. I almost said Chocobo GPT. Chocobo GP, brother. Forspoken. Avengers, brother. Foam Stars, brother. Really? You never played it again? I think if you like, and I'm only picking on the ones that are like broadly like panned across the board, you know. So if you say you never played a Square game that wasn't a quality product, like again, like they wouldn't have canceled if they wouldn't have canceled $300 million worth of projects otherwise. Their big games are great, brother. Forspoken and Avengers were the big games. Those were AAA games that they bet the entire farm on. Um, those games were as big as Final Fantasy games in terms of like the money that they spent on them. So you can't say the big games when those are the big games, you know? So everyone got a goat in a trash. That just shows how each FF are different from each other. No cohesive identity. Yeah, I could talk all day about that one. Even 14, yeah, 14 is also in like a weird place, man. I don't know what's going on with 14. Dawn Trail just really didn't seem to do it for some people. I know some people who love Dawn Trail. I do. But I also know people who fucking hate that game too. it's a it's a pretty even split, and it also ended up being the lowest rated expansion that the game has seen so far. Which, I mean, it's not like is it at a 79 or an 80 now? Okay, it's at a 79. Jesus, okay. The user score is at 5.3, but then I remember that's because culture war stuff. So I don't really care about that. But whenever that comes into play, I'm just like, yeah, I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm checking out. Um I'm just looking at the critic score. Kevin, thank you so much for the super chat. Forspoken was bad because they tried to sell us a glorified tech demo as a full game. Nothing felt finished, not even the story. You know what's funny though? You know what's funny, Kevin? That's kind of that's kind of on par for that studio. I hate to say it. That's kind of like what you'd expect from you know, the team that brought you FF15 sadly. But Forspoken also had like a really troubled development, and I don't think, I mean, I think some people know, but like I don't know if people like fully know. But like if you look into like the development of that game, didn't Forspoken have like a total of like 8 writers because they kept getting replaced? Yeah, exactly. Forspoken, like they basically kept rebooting it internally multiple times, and then they were each time they were like, it's not good enough, and they kept scrapping it over and over and over again, and then somehow the game just released, and it's like, how the fuck was this the final idea of everything you guys like went through? And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I just don't understand, why didn't you make Agni's Philosophy? Why? That was the thing that everyone was like, yo, this is so cool. I really want to play that. I thought Agni's Philosophy was kind of cooler than like even conceptually than like Final Fantasy 15. You know, not as much as Versus necessarily, but more so than like the reboot of what FF15 was. I thought Agni's Philosophy was cool, right? And don't get me wrong, Forspoken is Agni's Philosophy. Like that is the evolution of that idea. But it's so crazy to me that they took everything that was cool about that idea, got rid of it, and somehow made it like really fucking uninteresting. I just don't understand how that happened. Like what internally made them do that? I mean, that was the idea. Luminous Studio was to make the Luminous engine like the next RE engine, right? And I don't think that Square is going to give up on engine development. I think that Final Fantasy 17 is also going to run on like a new engine too. I don't think they'll reuse 16's engine. We don't know a terrible ton about 16's engine, but just kind of from observing the game, I don't really know if, like, just from a purely technical standpoint, I don't really know if, I don't really know if it should be reused. Tech-wise, there is a lot of problems with like it's the 60 frames mode for the for Final Fantasy 16. On PC it also kind of runs really kind of chonky. Honestly though, Re-Trilogy's tech issues are also kind of you know, and that's running on Unreal Engine too. I feel like, I don't know. But at the very least, I can say that with them using Unreal Engine, man, they've definitely been able to pump these Re-Trilogy games out like crazy, because you know, we're already getting some signs that Remake 3 is, you know, kind of cooking behind the scenes, and it might be ready to reveal, you know, whenever, because they're already doing English voice recording for it, which means that means that Remake 3 is in late development, by the way. Like, if they're recording the English voice acting, that implies a lot. They're already recording, yeah, because Cody Christian leaked it out. Bro took like a studio, like a selfie in the studio, and he was like, I'm back with my bestie, and he put like a cloud emote on it. And I'm just like, bro, You should have known that you can't do that. But yeah, he did it, and yeah, it's crazy too because if they're already recording English voice acting, that implies like two things. One, it implies that the Japanese voice acting is probably already done, or like 70 to 80% done, right? They usually start dubbing now like way ahead of time, but it implies that the Japanese version is probably pretty much done or close to. The second thing it implies is that all the scenes in the game are done, right? So that's another thing. It could very well just be recording for a trailer too. That's another thing too. It could be recording to dub over a trailer, which again, if they're recording to dub over a trailer, that also suggests some pretty crazy shit, man. That means that the trailer is like soonish, and we do have a state of play coming that's been rumored, and we also have SGF. I don't know if it's for that. I don't know if they're planning to reveal it deeper in the year. It could come in Tokyo Game Show. It could come at some other point. But it's there. So, again, Retrilogy is kind of showing the thing that I've been like kind of talking about all these years where I'm like, having an engine, having gameplay systems that are flexible enough to be reused, but not get boring. You know what I'm saying? Not feel like this is our Final Fantasy slop again, because you don't want FF to ever feel like that. You want FF to always feel fresh and new and like it's like reinvented its thing. But you also kind of want it to be vaguely familiar to like this broader concept of Final Fantasy. So I just think that like if they're reusing stuff from that trilogy over and over, they could worry less about like how are we going to implement airships, right? Like that's like always a problem. So like, oh, what are we going to do about airships? And typically what that boils down to now is that we just have fast travel. They tried to implement it in 15, but basically they implemented the Regalia Type F after development had already wrapped up. So this meant that the Regalia Type F wasn't something that was it wasn't something that was built into the game inherently. It's something that they came up with basically after the game's development wrapped up, which is why you essentially unlock a Regalia Type F after you beat the game. And it's not a core part of the game. Nightscape Prince, why do you think people hate FF16 so much? I thought the game was amazing. I'm I don't know if I'm the wrong person to ask or the right person to ask. I don't know. I thought it was yeah, I don't know if I'm the right person or the wrong person to ask. I think they should iterate on FF16 and make it more RPG. I don't think you can make FF16 more RPG. I think here's the thing. I think that the folks at Creative Studio 3 already considered status effects and party members and all those sorts of things, equipment, elemental weaknesses and stuff like that. And when they did, they came to the conclusion that it did not fit in their design. Right. So they wanted to make a hack and slash action game, and that's what they made. Like, I think that that like it's not like, because people say that like they should iterate on 16 but just add the RPG in there. People say that like they were developing the game and they didn't consider RPG elements. Like they didn't consider like, oh yeah, like we forgot to put in status effects. Like, oh, we forgot to like we forgot to do party members, or we didn't have time to do. They considered all that. Like it was a conscious design for them to not include those things. They wanted to make a character action game akin to Devil May Cry or Bayonetta that also don't have those things. And that's just exactly what they did. Right. It was all on purpose. Right. So I don't know why people kind of suggest that it was some sort of accident that they just, or that like they just didn't have time or something like that. They purposefully did not include those elements because that's not the game that they wanted to create. Right. So I don't know, to say that they should iterate it and then put back in all the stuff that they did not think fits that game style or battle system or combat, then it doesn't make any sense. They did not include that stuff because that is what the game is, right? So I don't think that they should iterate on it and put the stuff back in there, because what you're then asking for is not a version of that game with that stuff in it. You're asking for just a different game, you know, because there is no iconic style system where there's elemental weaknesses. They definitely thought, like, at some point, like, oh, we're using fire on a fire bomb. Like, should we change it so that you have to use ice magic? You know, it's not like they didn't consider that, right? They definitely considered that, but they were like, no, because it makes it so that you have to use fire magic. Now you can iterate on that system, but the iteration on that system is to make it a better hack and slash, is to make it a better Devil May Cry game. It's not probably to make it more of a traditional Final Fantasy RPG, because that is like definitively what that combat had decided not to do. Like, they specifically decided that they didn't want to do that. So if you want those things in a combat system, then what you're actually communicating is that you want a different combat system, but you want to be able to jump and move around like Clive, right? So I whenever I hear people say that they want like an RPGified version of Final Fantasy 16, what I really hear when I say that is that I'm like, you want re-trilogy combat with a jump button and a better dodge. You want a KH game? Actually, yeah. Because I do think that Kingdom Hearts is exactly that, right? Like, if you want like something that feels closer to that, but then has like elemental weaknesses and party members and stuff like that, then you probably want Kingdom Hearts, like, because that's exactly what that is. Now, wanting a Kingdom Hearts system in the context of a Final Fantasy game is something that like would be really cool. That's what Versus 13 was going to be. Unfortunately, Versus will never see the light of day. But yeah. KH Combat in FF would actually be interesting. Versus was going to have it. Remake had a more grounded variant of it via CC2 build. Yeah. And I personally would have liked both of those things, right? Because I feel like the command menu style is uniquely Square Enix. So the style that you see in Kingdom Hearts games, or the style that you see in like re-trilogy games, those games are essentially, that's like the style of combat that I feel like that Square should own, because that style of combat is so uniquely them, and nobody else can really do that style of combat, and that stands out, you know. That's the type of combat that's like, okay, I'm not getting this anywhere else. This feels unique. It's actually funny how Square keeps making FF Action to middling success 90% of the time when Kingdom Hearts is right there. I literally don't understand it myself, right? Because even when they were trying to make Final Fantasy 15, they rebooted from Versus, and I'm just like, why did you get away from like just making it a fucking Kingdom Hearts, right? Like, all you had to do was just say, this is Kingdom Hearts, but it's way more grounded and heavier, and you can switch party members. And it has a greater emphasis on like strategy or whatever than Kingdom Hearts, as opposed to just reflexes. You just literally rebalance the combat, make it feel a little bit more distinct and heavier, and the party member switching. And that would have been it. That would have been it. That's all. It's always been weird to me that FF15 stepped so far away from KH. Bro, literally all 15 like literally had to do was just be Kingdom Hearts, and then that was it. Like, combat wise, like, they really didn't need to do anything new there. Like, this is Kingdom Hearts, but you can do warp strikes and switch party members, and people would have been like, oh my god, this is fucking amazing. But this is part of what's been going on, right? And why they've been making the business units have to like communicate. Because before, each business unit operated like its own company, creative studio, whatever they call them now. They used to operate like their own fucking company, and they used to not like be sharing like secrets and stuff like that. Like, you could reach out to people, but it wasn't like they internally like discussed stuff, like internally discussed each other's projects. MMORPG Al, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Do you think GTA 6 has a positive or negative effect on their 2026 releases? Presumably FF14 next expansion and Kingdom Hearts 4. Great work as ever. Yeah, GTA 6. I think that everyone is going to try to release away from GTA 6. GTA 6 is going to be a really unfortunate time if you play other video games. It's really going to suck, because I think that everyone is looking at the GTA 6 release date, and they are creating like a crater of nothingness around it to not compete with it because it's so massive. I mean, people already did that for fucking Elden Ring, but I mean, imagine Elden Ring times like 5, right? So GTA 6 unfortunately is going to cannibalize anything else released the month before it and the months after it. And so I don't think it'll negatively impact their releases, but I do think that it is going to push the games either ahead or it's going to push them forward, and probably forward because it's easier to just delay something out. GTA style FF, yeah, because people will be like, never mind, I won't say it. Project CD, thank you so much for the super chat. You think Square Enix is showing up at any of these summer shows? I do. I don't know what they're going to show. I think it's mostly copium. I think that it's going to be a really light year for Square Enix overall. I don't think we're actually going to get much. I think that we're going to get stuff like, I think that like it's going to be like a quiet next few years for Square Enix. Not to say that we aren't going to get any releases, but I do think that, you know, they're rebooting the entire company from the ground up. Like, everything is basically completely being reworked. So they're reconsidering everything right now. You know, and their stocks are up right now too, because essentially what they've done is that, you know, they've managed to reach profitability without having to release anything new, because they've got rid of that much redundancy. They are essentially canceling a ton of games. And I know a lot of people are upset about Missing Link, but you guys have no fucking idea how many games that they actually canceled. Because remember, they canceled $300 million worth of games, right? Unannounced games. So all we publicly know is that they canceled Missing Link, but we don't even know all the other games that they canceled. And $300 million is quite a lot of money. And it seemed to mostly be focused on AA and smaller games, and none of their big AAA games got canceled. So think about that, right? And these weren't finished products either, so they canceled a lot of fucking shit. Oh, the Nate the Hate thing? Yeah, we can read that. Okay, I'll pull that up. Give me 1 second. This will be fun to talk about. Is there any way for me to pull this up without like exposing DMs? Let me see. Actually, I can. Because I'll just put it in Paint. We'll just put it in Microsoft Paint. And then there you go. Okay, sweet. So Nate the Hate is a fairly reliable source when it comes to video game leaks. And this is what he's had to say on a forum. I believe this is a Reset Era, right? So he said, would you be willing to say if any Japanese games will have a big presence at this year's SGF? I would obviously love an event from Sony or a direct from Nintendo at this time of year. But if I get to see Kingdom Hearts 4, Resident Evil 9, or something big like that at Jeff's show, I would already be thrilled. Persona 6 would be the ultimate dream, though. That or a teaser for Part 3 of Final Fantasy VII. And he replied, I know a few Japanese games being shown and revealed at SGF. Your expectations don't seem too high, so you should be thrilled per your own words. So, now note that he said he'd be thrilled if he saw Kingdom Hearts 4 or RE9. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking, and you're thinking that Kingdom Hearts 4 confirmed. Not my takeaway for like what's going to be there. I think it's going to be RE9. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what I think. If I had to like read into this too deeply, RE9, Final Fantasy VII Remake 3, maybe. I'm not completely sold on that. But remember that Rebirth was revealed in 2022 and then Rebirth released in 2024, right? So Rebirth had 2 years of marketing leading up to its release. So it stands to reason that Return, let's just call it FF7 Return, it will also probably have about the same amount of time for hype and build up. So I imagine that we could get a teaser for Part 3 at Summer Games Fest. That doesn't sound far-fetched to me. I know it sounds crazy to some because it's like, dang, we just saw Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, right? But bear in mind, too, that like 2 years after we got Rebirth, or 2 years after we got Remake, then we got the teaser for Rebirth, right? And so we're not 2 years out from we're not 2 years out from Rebirth, but we are probably, I would say, at the maximum 2 years away, right? Because I don't think it's that far away. So I think it's going to be a very fast follow-up. And yeah, I think the potential to see Part 3 there is not off the table. I've talked about that in my recent video, and with the English voice acting already being recorded, it just seems like that's kind of possible. Persona 6. I don't believe that Persona 6 can ever be real. I don't think that Persona 6 can ever. Persona ended at 5. It's over. Persona 6 would be like the greatest thing to happen to me, and that would be P6 for me is like on par with like revealing Final Fantasy 17. Put simply. Like, that's the level of reaction that P6 will get from me. Probably my most anticipated video game in existence right now, assuming that it exists. I'm a huge Persona guy, and yeah, that's like... I do think it's time for Atlas to tease Persona 6, but I do think that like what's more reasonable than getting Persona 6 is getting Persona 4 Rewind. So the remake of Persona 4 is definitely going to be announced there. If I had to dream big, we would get a trailer for Persona 4 Rewind, and then that trailer would then be followed by a teaser for Persona 6. And that would make me go absolutely crazy. I would lose my goddamn mind. Gregory, I know you don't like Persona. You don't like RPGs, my friend. I'm messing with you. Persona 6 will happen before KH4 for sure. Yeah. Honestly, yo, imagine the fucking tweets if Persona 6 does happen before KH4. That would be so fucking funny. honestly, Persona 6 would be like the only thing I could imagine happening, before. Like Persona 6, like that's the only thing I can imagine not happening before KH4. But if that does happen, holy fuck. Holy fuck, dude. I have Persona 5 Royal in my backlog, but I've never played a Persona game before. I'll get to it eventually. Oh man, you'll need to make a lot of space for it. Persona games are long. They are not short by any stretch of the imagination. They are 100 hours. Well, I say that. Only P5 is really 100 hours. You can beat Persona 3 and 4 in like 70 to 80. But Persona 5 is 100 plus hours for sure. And it is very long. But I'm a huge Persona guy. Love Persona. If I was a horrible person, I'd say FF17 too. No, I don't think FF17 will happen before Persona 6. I had to think for a second. Is the stream title a rumor? It's speculation. That's why I put question marks. We're just talking shit. Nothing's definitive. Dragon Quest 12 when? Dragon Quest 12 is the furthest off. By far. The only thing that is going to happen that's currently announced before Dragon Quest 12 is nothing. Nothing's going to happen before Dragon Quest 12. Dragon Quest 12 is far fucking off, dude. Yeah, like that's like the furthest Square Enix thing announced off. Yeah, I can't even tell you like what I think would happen before Dragon Quest 12. It's fucking far off. Because think about it, right? All we got is a logo, and like one thing you got to think about with Dragon Quest 12 is that Dragon Quest 12 was actually announced to be in development back when like Dragon Quest 11 like had been out for like a year or two. And they said, yeah, we already started on Dragon Quest 12. And then they announced Dragon Quest 12 and still all we got was a logo and that was it. Josh Z, thank you for the super chat. P5 took so much energy. I got sick right after I finished it. Man, dude. I played Persona 5 for the first time over COVID, and it was the best time to ever have played that game. It was like the stars lined up for me to play my first Persona, because essentially all the time had kind of like cleared up. I had nothing else to do, and it allowed me to like simulate life, normal life during lockdown. And yeah, it was great. I wonder if the deaths of Akira Toriyama, the composers whose name I might be forgetting, might be causing logistical issues. Yeah, Sugiyama. Dude, yeah. So the death of Akira Toriyama and Sugiyama, I'm sure that is just causing major delays for Dragon Quest 12. Again, because they have to probably pause for a second and think about what they're doing. So I don't think Dragon Quest 12 is going to be coming anytime soon. You know, there's also Final Fantasy 17 that some people were like, you know, like, when is FF17 going to happen? Guys, like, legitimately, I don't even think we're going to hear about Final Fantasy 17 proper until close to 2030. I know that sounds ridiculous, but hear me out. Final Fantasy is the crown jewel of Square Enix, right? That is the Mario to their Nintendo, the Sonic to their Sega, it is the core property of Square Enix as a company, right? And Final Fantasy is currently, I don't want to say it's on life support when it's still a multi-million seller, but it's currently not doing, let's just say, as healthy as it normally should, or as healthy as they want it to do to sustain the amount of money that they spend on it and for it to be their flagship franchise. They are probably going to be really, really careful about Final Fantasy 17. Like, extremely careful. It's going to be a game where they are going to very much take their time and not repeat the mistakes of the past, let's just say. They really got to figure some things out with Final Fantasy 17. Giant Monkey Butt, hello. A bit off topic, but can we get Barrett and KH4 Star Wars as a rebel soldier, please? That would be fucking amazing. See, that's the type of shit that like old Kingdom Hearts would do, right? Like Kingdom Hearts 2, when Hades like resurrected Auron in the underworld. Right? Like, that's the type of shit that, like, Kingdom Hearts used to do. Barrett being, like, a rebel soldier would be great. Or they would, like, allow, like, FF7, Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse to show up. And be like, ha ha ha, get it? Like, something like that. Like, that's what, like, old Kingdom Hearts would do. I don't know if new Kingdom Hearts would do that. I would be really unsure of what to do for FF17. And that's the thing, though, too, is that I think that Square Enix is probably unsure about what to do for Final Fantasy 17. So I think that they're going to pause, reassess what it is that they want to do moving forward. And I think that FF17 is going to be a reset. I know this sounds crazy, but I could genuinely see Final Fantasy 17 just being called Final Fantasy, in the same way that RE7 was just called Resident Evil. I don't know if they would fully drop the number, but I could see them being like, yeah, FF17 is just called Final Fantasy. Loves Darkness, hello. You're at Anime North. Hope you have a good time. I haven't been to a con in so long. I could too. They'd sneak. Yeah, no, they would definitely sneak the number in there, just like RE7 and 8. Oh, that's right. RE7 was still like called RE7, but it was still kind of a reboot though too, right? Resident Evil 7, Biohazard. It was still a reboot. I mean, even with Like a Dragon, right? They did that same thing where the with the infinity symbol for infinite wealth being an 8. So it's still clearly marked as like a Dragon 8. But then they like just turn the 8 on the side like, yeah, I don't know, it's infinite wealth. See, it's an infinity sign. It's an 8. But it's also an infinite. Yeah. I mean, that I could see it doing something like that. But the reason I could see it doing something like that is less than just being like, oh, we're dropping the numbers so that we hope that it'll sell more for people that don't know if they need to play the other 16 first, other 16 games first. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think that it's more like it could be symbolic of them rebooting it, of them rebooting the series, if that makes sense. To be like, we need to start fresh and communicate that this game is a fresh start for the series, because I do think that that's what they need the 17th entry to be, is like, yeah, we're kind of starting over. Is it confirmed they're dropping the numbers? No, we're just shooting the shit. We have no idea. It'll be like Final Fantasy something. Yeah, I could see it. I don't really know if it would sell more or less because of that, but I do think that there has to be like some type of like, whether it's in like a meta sense or like whether it's in like a direct sense, I have a good feeling that they're going to want to communicate that this is like a reboot of the series, if that makes sense. Or this is us like kind of starting over fresh. Because I do think that's what 17 is ultimately going to be, is kind of like a fresh start. I don't think it'll sell much more. A lot of FF problems come from elsewhere than numbering. Yeah, I don't think that would like do it. Like, I don't think there is any easy fix that they can do. Like the easiest fix they can do is multiple platforms, right? Like that's like the most obvious thing that you can do to improve the situation. But I don't think that multi-platform is going to like magically fix it. And I do think that like, I do think a lot of people assume that like that like they're just gonna do that, and then it'll be fixed, right? Like it'll just be like the problem is like done. I don't think that's how it works. I think that they have to rebuild the brand. And I know that's not the popular take, because the popular take is that once it's multi-platform, everything will magically be fixed. I think that Square Enix as a company and Final Fantasy itself needs to rebuild brand. Because again, we don't have a Square Enix like we have a Capcom or a FromSoft or even Monolith Soft, right? Like, people would, the people who love like Xeno games, like anything Monolith is working on, those fans would buy it because the brand recognition is there for them and they're building it. Atlas is really starting to get that way too, where they've been like really building their brand recognition, and people are like, whatever the new Atlas game is, I'm interested in it. Like with Metaphor, right? Like, I don't know if I would have picked Metaphor up like right away if it wasn't for the brand recognition that I got from Persona and SMT with Atlas. But I did. I was like, dude, I don't care. I'm like, this is from like the creatives behind like, Persona and SMT. I'm all fucking over Metaphor from day one, from day zero, from day negative 500, like the moment the game was announced. I'm like, okay, Project 3 Fantasy, interesting. Now, that's not to say that Square doesn't have anyone who still feels that way about them. They definitely do, you know? Especially those of us who grew up with like Square games being like the biggest, coolest thing ever, right? But for people who don't have that attachment to the brand, right? Like maybe they play Final Fantasy 16 and maybe they think it's like a very cool game, right? But then it's not like they're looking through like the entire library of like Square Enix games after that and then being like, oh my god, I have to go play all these other games. Because first of all, the thing is, if you like Metaphor, then you're gonna love SMT and Persona, right? If you like Elden Ring, you're gonna discover the Souls games and you're gonna discover Sekiro, and you'll go down like a whole pipeline. Similarly, if you discover, RE4 Remake or any recent Resident Evil game, you'll go down a Resident Evil pipeline. You'll also discover great games like Devil May Cry 5 and the Monster Hunter games. And you'll be really, really like interested and love those games. And part of the reason that there's a pipeline there is because, one, they have a sense of style and design philosophy that's shared across their projects. And so when you go down that pipeline, there's a through line of things that can keep you interested in the games that they make. The only pipeline FF has is 1 through 9. Maybe 10 can be added to that, but no more than that. I would definitely include 10. But yeah, I think it kind of ends at 10, though, at maybe 12 for some people. But yeah, that's that. I mean, and that's the problem though, is that there's no. Yeah, I would definitely say that 10 should be included in that, because I don't think that 10 is still different enough for you to like, for most people to like 1 through 9 and then absolutely hate 10. There are definitely some people that do, but most people that like 1 through 9 love 10. And yeah, I would say that like I would say that even like 12 to a degree. I would still probably include 12 as like still being close enough for a lot of people. Even though it's a little bit more polarizing, I would still say that there is still kind of a through line with those games where you can like them enough to go down a pipeline, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? The people who dropped off a 10 tend to not like the voice acting. Almost everyone else liked the game. Yeah, I mean, they tend to have like a more superficial criticism of it, like, oh, 10 doesn't have a world map. Um, which I get liking the world map, but like the absence of it having one is not necessarily, I think, like premise enough for criticism, when what it offers in place of a world map is also pretty compelling. And that is very big, very fleshed out 3D zones that no other previous Final Fantasy had, that had tons of secrets hiding within them. And it was all a series of interconnected zones that created a pilgrimage, right? And so, the criticism of flatly like no world map, as if that's a checklist thing, I don't think adding a world map to 10 would have made it a better game. And that's what you have to think about is like, is the absence of the world map a good criticism because the game would have been better if it had one? And I don't think 10 would have been better if it had a world map. It just would have been a nice thing to have, I guess, after. Giant Monkey Butt, thank you for the super chat. Just bringing back PS1 era FF style for classic fans and using Retrilogy battle system going forward for new fans and swap back and forth between the two. I mean, yeah, for sure, man. Like, I think that people just miss the old FF conventions. I think that's all it is. I think that's like 100% of the reason of why people, you had all the discourse with Expedition 33 and, Final Fantasy, Some people even saying, oh, Final Fantasy should copy Expedition 33. Well, I don't think that Final Fantasy should copy Expedition 33. But here's the thing. Everything that people have been wanting from Expedition 33 was just old Final Fantasy stuff, right? Like, so all the stuff people were saying they should copy, I'm like, dude, no. It's just the thing that Final Fantasy used to do, but it doesn't do anymore. It's literally not, it's not copying. It would just be FF like going back to like the old thing. So I don't think, I mean, other than like the parry mechanic, right? But like, other than that, like, it's not really going back. It's literally just, I mean, it's not really like copying Clair that people are like really asking for. They're just asking for like, oh, we just want you to make classic Final Fantasy again. I think that's what people are really communicating when they say that, because yeah. But I don't think that like, I don't think that they need to necessarily make classic FF in like a modern sense, but I do think that they need to start making FF games that include all the classic components in them, and they need to reinvent them in ways that are sensible and recreate the sensations that people were meant to feel from those abstractions, but with modern tech and modern game design. And what I mean by that, for example, would be something like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has ATB. It has party members that are all playable, mind you. It has the materia system, some very creative system that allows you to experiment with different builds. It's going to have airships in the next part. It has mini games. So all of these different components and elements of like what we consider Final Fantasy are all present within Rebirth. And it's one of the only few modern games where we can actually say that that's really the case. Might actually be the only modern game where we can actually say that's the case. And so while it does do a lot of that stuff again, it doesn't just like, format it in the same way as the PS1 game. It does have like its own unique takes on that. And don't get me wrong, I am definitely not saying that like, Rebirth as it is just like, just paste in new content or whatever. Rebirth does have some flaws with it too that can definitely be reworked. But the general premise, the general attempt of trying to bring back everything that was classic Final Fantasy into a brand new game is all there. From, again, world map, party member, ATB, all this shit that I want, brother, is there. And so, the problem with a lot of the modern games is that they spend time trying to convince players that they don't actually want or need that, rather than trying to present it to them in a way that reinvents it and makes it appropriate for a modern game, right? So airships, for example, in like with 16, they were like, well, we don't need airships because you have fast travel, right? It's really hard to convince people that you just don't need a thing that you like. You know what I'm saying? You don't need the world map. You don't need it. It's better to just fast travel. Both 15 and 16 were like, well, you don't need to control all the party members. 15 later on fixed that with an update. But for those of you who played 15 at launch, you couldn't control the party members. And they were like, yeah, we did test on it. We thought it wasn't necessary. Yeah. Wait, why do I hate Rebirth? I don't hate Rebirth. Very much the opposite. I think Rebirth is a great game. Yeah, so I think that they just need to like be like, when I say that they need to have a style of game, I think that a lot of people are thinking like, the type of strictness that like Ubisoft or has with like Assassin's Creed or something like that. And I'm like so like not talking about that at all. Like I'm talking about like they just need some basic ideas. Like a Final Fantasy game is a game that has uh party members in it. Like that should be a thing, right? Like that should be um like we shouldn't even be debating that. Like I feel like that should be like a core element. This is a game with party members. And you play as the party members. You play as all the party members. Like that should be like the thing. Now you could change each game, you can change how you address doing that, right? Like you can change the way character swapping works, the way each character works. But I do think that should be like a core tenet, right? You should say that Final Fantasy is a game that has mini games in it. Doesn't have to be a fuck ton of mini games. Could be very few mini games. It could be one mini game. Could like really focus on like blitzball or something or chocobo racing. But there should be some type of side diversion, right? Okay, cool. Like this isn't like complicated stuff. FF should always feel like an RPG and not any other genre. Yes, right? Like FF is an RPG first. And everything should serve RPG game design and not like, oh, maybe we'll make it like a hack and slash or something like, no. Like the stuff that like I'm talking about there is not even like like I say, it's not like I'm saying that like every FF should be like uniform or like it should be exactly the same thing. I'm just saying like damn dog, they should have like some type of guideline like there's like okay, at least like at the very least we definitely have to do this. Like I understand some people look at this as like limiting too. Like that's another problem is that they look at it like, oh, you're putting it in a box. But actually restrictions are kind of like where art thrives and not like saying, oh, you can do whatever you want. Like usually art is most interesting with creative restrictions. That's kind of what people liked about old games, right? Like is that with old video games, like they had so many restrictions, so to like get around all of those restrictions, they came up with like really clever and fun stuff that just would not exist without the technical restrictions that they had. Yeah. Josh Z, thank you for the super chat. I played Rebirth for all of 2024, 8 months and 500 hours. Jesus Christ. Haven't done that since FF9 25 years ago. It's quality no matter what people say. Jesus Christ. 500 hours. Damn, man, that's awesome. But that's like one thing I can say I really respect about the game though is that I think that you definitely get a game that lasts you for a very, very, very long time. A very long time. I understand that people feel like the game was like bloated with content, like for sure. But the biggest problem I think is not that they included necessarily too much content, although you could argue that. I think that like the structuring of it is really the bigger problem because, and again, I'll use Expedition 33 as kind of an example. With Expedition 33, there's a lot of side content, but like the way it structures it is that basically you're not really doing most of it until Act 3. You can do some of it as you go along, but the bulk of it comes as post game. So I actually recommend most people just go straight through Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think you should just blast straight through it. And then once you do that, once you complete the main story, I think that you should start a hard mode playthrough and then take your time and do all the side content and explore. And I think if you do that, Rebirth will really click for you. And I think if you like try to 100% the game and do a completionist run your first playthrough, then I think you'll fucking hate it. Katase even said, don't try to do a completionist run your first playthrough. Yeah, 100%. And the biggest problem with the game is that they didn't have anything in it to tell people to not do a completionist playthrough. And so a lot of people play it in a way that ruins it for themselves. And it also didn't help either that you have to do a thing in each zone in order to be able to travel back. It's not the game's fault if you have OCD and want to complete everything. It's not, but it is something that for the game designer's benefit, they would want to acknowledge and know ahead of time so that they can put things in there to be like, to basically make people not ruin it for themselves, you know? It's better to go straight to the final boss in E33 IMO. I did all the side content first, and I was so over level I one shot at the final boss. Yeah. E33 is basically set up so that it's true post game, right? So it's like truly like after you beat the final boss, you have like an entirely different game that opens up after, and it's really fun. And to me, that's like a better way of doing side content than what all these other modern RPGs are kind of doing. I mean, that's what like classic FF used to do, right? Classic FF is kind of like you get to the final boss and then that's when and like, you could beat the game or you can kind of spend, 30 hours fucking around and finding shit and doing things. So kind of like that giant gold poop that you get for collecting all the Koroks. Yeah. Do you think Expedition 33 is a lock for Game of the Year? Well, we're halfway through the year, which is a disturbing fact. And, there's still 6 more months, man. A week and 6 more months. And so I don't know what's going to happen between now and then. A lot of games could potentially release that, yeah. But I do think it's the strongest contender so far. I mean, it's the highest rated user score of any game of all time. So, at the very least, it's going to get the fan vote, but I also think that a lot of journalists are going to go for it too. Yeah, Death Stranding 2 could be the game that changes that for sure. But I think, yeah, when you look at the reviews, you look at the user score, you look at the reception, E33 stands a strong chance. Isn't that literally FF16? There are so many side quests at the end. Yeah, but the difference is that Expedition 33's side quests are rewarding both narratively and gameplay wise. Whereas I don't think I could say that so much. I think that 16 has like maybe like 5 or 6 narratively rewarding side quests, most of which do come at the end. 2 of which happen back to back, and they're in I forget the name of the place, but they're right outside the castle. And that was the bearer. Yeah. And also, 16 has like a lot of the same problem with Rebirth with its side quest too. But I think I found it actually worse by like a mile, because at least with Rebirth there was different content that you could do, whereas the side quests in 16 were like literally, I mean, it literally can only be talk to somebody and fight something. Like there was no possibility for a mini game or anything that was like an unforeseen thing to happen. Narratively, sometimes they were interesting, but in terms of gameplay, there was literally nothing that could happen gameplay wise. That would, yeah. 16 side quests made the game feel AA and not AAA. They did, and the reason is because of the icon fights. Like that is just like the icon fights and kind of the team's lineage as an MMO team too. But yeah, the icon fights are where the budget went, 100%. And when you play the parts in between the icon fights, you know where the budget went. You know where it went. But the problem kind of is, though, the icon fights were cool, but the problem is that icon fights were immaculate. Yes, but here's the thing: how many hours do you do icon fights in the game? Right? Like, I'm sure that like if you do it, actually, let me see. So if you look up all icon fights, that includes cutscenes too. It's 3 hours and 48 minutes, right? But it's like a 40-hour game. So what's the total? Yeah, so it's a 40-hour game. 60 if you do the sides. That makes sense. So it's what you do 10% of the time. So for a disproportionate amount of budget to go to like what you're doing 10% of the time is like not probably a good idea. Do you see what I mean? Like they were cool. They're badass and they're like the highlight of the game. But again, it's just like, what you're doing for a little less than 10% of the game is like the highlight, the draw of the game. And so what you're doing for 90% of the game has to suffer for that 10% to be like really awesome. Is probably, again, like, I don't think that was like the best distribution of budget. Because for as much went into the icon fights, I mean, you could have had like a ton of different enemy variety. Enemies could have been like, designed better. You could have had like, more attacks for Clyde to use in like his base form without having to use the cooldowns. All kinds of other things. So yeah, I think that they were cool, but then I just think that like budget wise, that was probably a problem. Yeah, I mean, think about like what you could have done with that budget, right? For everything else that was in the game. So like one of the issues that the game has is that like a lot of the cutscenes, for example, that aren't, how do I say this? So games have kind of like their A tier cutscenes, which are like fully animated, right? Especially like RPGs. They'll have like their A tier cutscenes where it's fully animated, and then they have like their kind of like more like B tier cutscenes where it's more like just two characters like talking to each other, and there's not like a whole lot of animation and stuff. 16 has like a disproportionate amount of like B tier cutscenes where two characters will kind of like stiffly talk to each other, and the facial animation's kind of poor, and they don't really emote much because it's meant to be a cheaper cutscene that can be produced for side quests and stuff like that. And then it has like a large number of those, not just throughout its side quest, but also throughout its main quest. And again, that's kind of a cost saving measure so that they could put more money toward the like the big budget scenes. So again, if those big budget scenes outweigh like everything else in the game, so much so that you're fine with like what we got, then everything else that I'm talking about won't make sense to you. But if those scenes bothered you in any way, then you'll see what I mean about like the icon fights being like, ooh, was that worth it? Or I don't know. Ripadesky, hello. Thank you for the Prime sub, dude. We're doing great, dude. We're doing really good. It's been a while since I've streamed, so I'm having a very good yap sesh. It's been like a month. I can't believe it's been like a month. But I'm back. I'm back for good, I think. I say before I disappear for another month. Do you think Yoshida will never make a single player FF game again? I have no idea. I have no idea. I think he will, maybe. I don't know. Actually, it's anyone's guess. I could see CS3 doing another FF game. I'm okay with them doing another FF game. I just, would want them to realize why that game was polarizing and like some of the mistakes that they made in it. But I wouldn't be like upset if they did. I just wouldn't want them to make anything too close to that again. Or if they did make something close to that again, they would step back for a second and read some of the feedback on it. And then try again, rather than just being like, yeah, we're going to do more of the same thing. Because I wouldn't want them to do more of that style. Yeah, I don't know who's doing 17, to be honest. I actually don't think CS3 is doing 17. I actually really don't know who's doing 17. I would also not even be surprised too if 17 is just like a concept right now, if that makes sense. I don't mean like a concept in terms of like, I don't even mean like a concept in terms of like, oh, they're conceptualizing it. I mean like a concept in terms of like, it's like a thing being deliberated on in the company and nobody knows what to actually do about it. That's what I feel about 17. Like I don't even know. I don't think that 17's like deep in development. I think it's like deep in deliberation, if that makes sense. Don't get me wrong. I do think that someone has been working on 17, but I think that after like 16 and Rebirth and then Square having to do all those layoffs, and then after them doing the layoffs, like reorganizing the company, I think that like whatever FF17 they had in development is like in stasis right now. And I don't necessarily mean like it's completely paused and they're just like, we're just gonna like not continue to develop that right now. But I think that they are probably like deliberating heavily on what to fucking actually do about it. And like, I'm willing to bet that it's possible that 17, like whatever it is, could have been in development, and it's entirely possible like they may have like restarted like whatever they were doing just based on, the way things are looking. And maybe not even completely this is all conjecture, by the way. This is not based on like me knowing anything or like rumors or anything like that. I'm just like projecting what I think would happen, or like, based on the fact that they just had all of that shit happen to them. And yeah. So I see all your tweets now since you have the new account, but the universe traded by taking away video notifications on YouTube for your uploads. Wow. I'd rather it like do the one where I make money from you seeing it. Cruel universe. I hate that. Terrible. Very unfair. The universe giveth and taketh away. Yeah. I bet that Expedition 33 probably made them rethink their approach. So here's my assessment on what I think will be the impact of Expedition 33 back onto Final Fantasy. Is that so I think that some people are like thinking that I don't think E33 has influenced them. So I think it would be bad if like it didn't influence them at all. Like if it didn't make them pause and think whatsoever. Let me explain like what I mean by that is that I do think that if a game built on very much many of Squaresoft's innovations in game design can be treated to this much success and this good of reception, and them just not even think about it, not even be a factor at all. Maybe not even like for specifically 17, but just like the way that they conduct their business in general. If it does not make them pause and think about that, then I would say that would probably not be like the best move for them, right? Like, again, I know some people take it to the extreme and they're like, Final Fantasy 17 needs to be like exactly like Expedition 33. It needs to like, or even some people have said that like production efficiency, but not genre or game mechanics. Brother, you mean the genre and game mechanics that Final Fantasy made? So that's what I'm saying. Like, how can it not? You mean that Final, like that's the thing, right? Like, what are we saying when we say that like E33 shouldn't influence FF? Because E33 was influenced by FF. So it's basically in a roundabout way saying that like, oh, E33 shouldn't be, I mean that Final Fantasy 17 shouldn't be influenced by Final Fantasy. Which I don't agree. Like I think that like it should be, for sure. Like, the part of E33 that should influence Final Fantasy is the part of E33 that is Final Fantasy. That's what I think. So I do think that like I said, I don't think it should be the sole inspiration. I don't think definitely shouldn't be a copy. But I do think that in the same way that they listed Devil May Cry and God of War for influence for 16, I don't think it'd be wrong for them to list like Expedition 33 as like one of the games that influence the work, or that they look to for to be like, there are ways that we can definitely do this. And when you talk about like production efficiency, guys, it is a lot cheaper to make a turn-based game. Like that is for sure. Like, it's so much cheaper. I don't think that you can make like an action game version of Expedition 33 and it turn out to like nearly the same quality. Because an action game requires very good animations, like super proper animations. And then on top of having like, these incredibly high tier animations, you have to have really good AI and scripting, designing a boss fight. Action games cost a lot of fucking money to make. They're a lot more expensive than making something like a turn-based game. And so, yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about cost efficiency, turn-based is not off of the table, right? So, whether the next game should be turn-based, I would not rule out turn-based, is what I'm saying. I know a lot of people do. It's like they can never go back to turn-based. That is a cost-saving measure. Like, that is a way that you can make... See, I disagree. Final Fantasy is not defined by a game mechanic. I really disagree with, like, a single game mechanic, no. But, like, I do think that, like, it's a problem when a video game is, like when the argument is that a video game is not bound to being a video game. I do think that, like, the series not being defined by its gameplay, or, like, I think that's, like, a problem. Like, yeah, I wouldn't say turn-based or bust for sure, but I do think that, like, Final Fantasy is defined by the style of games that made people like them. I do think a game is defined by its gameplay, actually. The FF can be anything its creator wants mindset at Square has been one of the most destructive mindsets to happen to FF. It completely evaporate the identity the series had. So yeah, so what it used to be is that whenever something was introduced that wasn't within the realm of Final Fantasy, what Sakaguchi would do is that Sakaguchi would he would essentially he would allow them to make their own IP, right? So if you wanted to create something that just wasn't Final Fantasy, Sakaguchi would say, okay, well then you're going to make Xenogears, or you're going to make like Parasite Eve, and we're going to turn those into their own IP. And so what would happen is that Square would have like a fuck ton of really, really cool IPs outside of Final Fantasy that were also still somehow adjacent to Final Fantasy. So Final Fantasy fans would be interested in them, but it'd be something like, oh, we can't do this in Final Fantasy, so we made it a brand new IP, right? So there were guidelines on what Final Fantasy was, and then whenever someone had a fucking cool idea, but it didn't fit in the realm of Final Fantasy, they created a brand new thing, and that thing would become a cult classic. Yeah, Mana, Xenogears, etc. Right? Yeah, that's exactly it. Right? Like, you wanted Final Fantasy but action. Okay, well, we're making the Mana series, right? They would do all these kinds of things, and they would keep Final Fantasy like within like a certain realm, so that you knew what Final Fantasy was. And again, they would make Final Fantasy adjacent things. Vagrant Story, Chrono. Exactly. You guys can go on and on and on about this. So they would make those things, and they would be new IP, and they would kind of be offshoots of what FF's DNA was, but they would allow FF to keep its identity while also taking those ideas that people had while working on FF that were really cool and were genuinely great ideas for games, and create those as new IPs. Now what they do is that they take the thing that like is like FF, or that people identify with FF gameplay, and they make that into a spin-off like an Octopath or Bravely Default, and they take the main series, and then they're like, FF is like always going to be the brand new IP. It's always going to be like the random new thing that the creator that we chose to do. So now it's the opposite. Now it's like, the Parasite Eve would have been like the Final Fantasy 17, and Xenogears would have been 18, etc., so on and so forth, right? Instead of the other way around. Like something like Final Fantasy 16, for example, probably would have been like a brand new IP if Sakaguchi, in the way that he ran things back then, would have designated it. Of course, Sakaguchi does like Final Fantasy 16, but yeah. Always glancing right over the Octopath Traveler. Brother, I just said Octopath Traveler. I just talked about it. What do you mean I'm glancing right over it? But that's what I'm saying though, is that like the sort of like things that people would associate with FF now is typically relegated to the spin-off, or not the spin-off, but typically relegated to an unrelated double A game, and then the mainline FF is usually something that's like entirely different now. But back in the day, what it was is that they had a more firm, leash on what FF was. And so whenever something was pitched that was a really good idea, it would become a brand new IP. And then Final Fantasy, they would take the pitch that they felt was best for the brand and most aligned with the brand. And then also too, they created things like Saga, which would allow for things that didn't necessarily fit within the mainline series to continue. They would allow that to thrive as its own IP. I so badly want to see how 7 Part 3 does if it launches on all platforms day one. I don't think it will be on all, but at least PC would be such a fun test. I would be so mad if it doesn't launch on PC day one. I do not ever, after playing Rebirth on base PS5 and then playing it on PC, I do not fucking want like that shit to only be locked to base PS5 again. Or it would have PS5 Pro. But I don't want to buy PS5 Pro. Not when I have a good gaming PC and it could launch on there day one and I can have it at full quality day one. You mean KH4 will be a PS6 launch game? It could be a cross-gen game for sure. It's funny because we still don't have platforms announced for KH4. Actually, we don't even know. Like, it could be a PS5 exclusive for all we know. We actually don't know because I don't think they ever announced platforms for KH4. Like, is it coming to PC day one? We literally don't know because KH4 does not have platforms announced. Do you guys ever think about that? They have not announced the platforms for it. I think KH4 will come to Switch too. I'm not too worried about that. Maybe. Yeah, I don't think Remake 3, even if Remake 3 does launch on all platforms, it's really difficult for me to see like it blowing up because I just don't imagine people playing it for the first time. But also, I mean, what I mean by that is playing it like as their first remake re-trilogy game. Like, I'm going to start with Final Fantasy VII Re-Trilogy Part 3. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it'll sell faster, but honestly, I don't think multi-platform is like really going to help them like tremendously anyway. I do think day one PC will help them, but I don't think that like, I mean, day one PC, yes, right? Xbox is certainly not going to help. And before Switch 2, that was the only other option. So, it's not like Xbox was going to contribute like a crap ton of people. I think that would have like Xbox would have amounted to a few 100,000 tops. Like, that's it. And for what it was worth, they were already getting that money from the PlayStation exclusivity checks. So I don't think that like Xbox would have been like a huge delta. Switch 2 potentially could have been a pretty big factor because I think it could add like an extra 1 or 2 million onto their sales in terms of because Switch 2 will be really popular in Japan. I don't think most people in the West would buy the game on Switch 2, but I do think it's necessary for the sales in Japan. But also too, whenever you look at big games, big AAA games, let's look at like Capcom games for example. If you look at Resident Evil, if you look at Monster Hunter, those games aren't on Switch. I mean, Monster Hunter Rise is, but for the most part, Monster Hunter Wilds, wasn't on Switch, and the Resident Evil games aren't really on Switch. But all those games are on PlayStation, PC, and Xbox, and 90% of their sales are just on PlayStation and PC, and that's without Xbox. So, um, this is part of why I think this sort of multi-platform will fix everything philosophy that a lot of people have been saying. I just don't think it's the case because most of these games sales are already on PC and PlayStation, which is where these games have already released. Now, yes, they will sell more on PC if they're there day one, and yes, they will sell more in Japan if they are on Switch 2 day one. But I don't see most people like a extremely huge audience that's not currently buying these games, buying them on Switch 2, where they would get like a visually inferior version of the game. And I think that most gamers, like most core gamers, are owning a Switch 2 and a PS5. So the audience that would be playing this in the West would be people that are already invested in dual ecosystems and not just the Switch 2s. So I think the biggest delta is Switch 2 for Japan and having it on PC day one. And I think that can result in an extra million in sales. But like, I do think that like people kind of have it in their head that if it's multi-platform, that these games would go from selling like 4 or 5 million to like 10 million. I just don't think that's going to be the case per se. Yeah, I mean the younger audience is just not interested in the series, and that's been a big problem and something that Kitase and Yoshi P have talked about both. Um, and then on top of that, you have a split on the current Final Fantasy fan base, where you have people who are more invested in like the CS3 style of Final Fantasy, and then other people who are more invested in the CS1 style of Final Fantasy. You have people who think that Final Fantasy should be turn based, and you have people who think that Final Fantasy should be action. And, if they hold to the current trend, they'll do something with Final Fantasy 17 that divides that fan base even more and more and more, you know? And so that's kind of the problem, right? Is that they keep they keep splitting the fan base further and further and further. And this is also why too I feel like they do need that identity unifying game, because if they don't and they continue to split that fan base further, then kind of what you end up having is you continue to factionalize it down. And how can you get word of mouth going when half of your audience always hates the product? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the fan base needs to be more open minded to change. That'll never happen. That'll never happen. Name a fan base where that's happened. That won't happen. When like you can't say that, oh, like, and I don't mean you, but I like specifically Panda Eyes. I just mean like in general, because I hear like a lot of people talking about this. But like a lot of people are like fan bases like need to change, and that would help series. But like kind of the problem is that that's essentially like asking human nature to change, right? Like, what can you even do about like the way people are? You have to plan around human nature. What's that quote from the Prince again? Not me. No, it's the one where... I can't find it, but it was something like, act as man is not how you want him to be. Something like that. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? I think it was something like that. Yeah, that's it. You must act as men are, not as you wish them to be. That's the quote I'm looking for from Machiavelli. So that's the thing, is that Square can't Verso did nothing wrong. You should read the Julie read the Julie journal log in Expedition 33 if you think that. So you're saying SE should be Machiavelli? Not necessarily, but that quote is still like very true. You have to act as man is, not as you want them to be. Emmett Silk probably, yeah. Yeah. And that quote is applicable here, right? Like you can't hope that the fans are going to change, because that's tantamount to hoping that human nature changes. And it probably is not going to be able to do that. But what you can do is that you can understand human nature, and then you can react accordingly, right? So you can understand that, okay, this is the way people are, and because I know people are like that, I'm going to make this set of moves that I know it will be beneficial for the company. So Square Enix has to acknowledge that fandoms aren't open-minded. They're not really known for doing that. You can win a fandom over, or you can do a new thing, but the thing is that you have to do the new thing so incredible that you win over most of the fandom and you win over brand new people. It would be a lot harder to convince 20 to 30% of the Final Fantasy fan base to change their mindset than it would be to just provide a separate version of FF that they prefer. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's what I had been preaching about. Is that, you're not going to like change like the entire, like, in the divide in the fan base is not going to disappear. And you're also just not going to convince people that games they didn't like, that they should like. That's just not going to happen. People are just going to like what they like and like what they don't like. So, you're not going to be able to do that. You can't even like change people's mind about like treating others better and like being a good human being. So, things with like hard consequences and stuff like that. So to get them to change about like, far less relevant things, like, you should like this different thing that you currently don't like. Huge stretch of the imagination that you'd be able to get people to change that. So they shouldn't design a game thinking, oh, we hope our fans are going to be open-minded. And I mean, not to say that they shouldn't hope that their fans will be open-minded, but they shouldn't design it to be dependent on that alone. They should design it to be like, okay, maybe this is a new experience, but we know that it can satisfy, people who hold these beliefs about Final Fantasy, etc. And I do think that the best thing that they can do is create, it's hard to create something that's like agreeably like a good Final Fantasy because people are so factionalized on it now. So that's one of the reasons why, one, I feel like Final Fantasy does kind of have to reboot in a way. Two, while I do think that there are a lot of different opinions on Final Fantasy, there's also a lot of commonality about Final Fantasy too. And I think that a lot of people do agree that like when a Final Fantasy does have, a world map, an airship, playable party members, etc., those are the things that usually elevate the game, right? And a lot of things that like the modern FFs have skipped past. So I think that if they include those things and focus on those things that are the agreeable things about Final Fantasy, then they could probably build something that gets that kind of acclaim, right? The reason I say I don't think turn-based is off of the table, and not to say that they need to go back to turn-based, because I do think that turn-based is like, I mean, I do think that the re-trilogy combat is the style of combat they should go for sure. It's just like the best thing that they've made. It just is, and it's super unique. But I don't think turn-based is off the table either as like an option, because let's be honest here. Like, while I know a lot of people that like they get turned off by action Final Fantasy, I don't know anyone who's a Final Fantasy fan, like a long-time Final Fantasy fan, that would not buy a turn-based Final Fantasy, or that would be really upset that Final Fantasy is turn-based. Right? The like no one's going to be like, they went with turn-based. Fuck. Right? Like most of the core audience will be okay with it, right? And one of the you have to think too, how does a game get virality, right? Like how does a long-running franchise blow up? And one of the ways in which it does this is that, first of all, it blows away its core audience. It blows away its core audience to the point of where people start talking about it, and it spreads to the audience outside. And then more and more people talk about it, and then people come in, and then they're like, oh, this is interesting. That's the problem with turn-based purists. They're not open-minded to playing action or ATBFF. Wait, I consider ATBFF to be command-based, which is kind of under the umbrella of turn-based. Could be the other way around, but like, I would say that most people are open-minded to ATB. But the other side of the fandom are willing to play turn-based. But I think that would actually be an argument to make turn-based like Final Fantasy games again, right? Because if one half of your fan base is like unwilling to try, or like unwilling to play something, but 100% of your fan base is willing to try something or play something, then like logically, why would you not make the thing that like 100% of people are like willing to play? And I think that's why like turn-based is not. That's what I'm saying. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were arguing. I'm sorry, Panda Eyes. I didn't mean that. But it's still a problem with the fan base, right? Yeah. So that's why I think turn-based is still on the table, is because I think that like, if half of guys won't play it, and then the other half of guys will be like, the other half of guys will definitely play it, but 100% of people will play it. You know what the fuck I'm saying. I'm stuttering all over my words. This happens after I've been streaming for too long. I'm a turn-based purist, and I have no problem playing other action RPGs. I just prefer FF to remain closer to what it used to be. I feel like they would gain a lot of virality too by making a turn-based FF game, because I feel like a lot of people will kind of talk about it, if that makes sense. Because I feel like a lot of people will feel like it's a victory, like they bullied the company to go back to turn-based. And I know that sounds kind of silly at first, but like, when you look at kind of the legs that something like Expedition 33 is having, I do kind of think like, man, there are so many people this invested in like a high fidelity turn-based game being a thing, and like hate the fact that like Final Fantasy is not filling that role anymore, that like I do kind of wonder what would happen if Final Fantasy did do that. I do believe that Expedition 33 will reach close to 10 million. This is something that like one of Larian's people have also talked about recently, where he said that he sees it reaching 8 to 10 million. I agree. I think it's going to reach like a figure like 8 million lifetime sales, somewhere around there. And the reason I think that, chat, is because I'm still seeing the virality of it. I think the word of mouth is that good. I think this game is going to sell 1 million units per year. I think every year, just like Nier Automata, they're going to have a new sales update. Every year. And I think they're going to, I don't know if they've reached 3 million or not yet, but I think that they will reach 3 million next month. That's my guess. Sometime in the middle of June, they'll reach 3 million, and then they'll reach 4 and 5. Exactly. Word of mouth is important to the FF fan base, kind of hinders that. Right. But that's been like the fallout of factionalizing a fan base each time that you release a product, right? And so everyone's not on the same page. Maybe because I'm not knee deep in Dragon Quest fandom, but it's not like there are like 20 different types of Dragon Quest, and like Dragon Quest fans of like Dragon Quest IX hate fans of Dragon Quest XI, and are like, oh my god, there goes another pretentious Dragon Quest XI fan hating on Dragon Quest IX or 8 or something like that. Like, to my knowledge, most people that like Dragon Quest like Dragon Quest. I'm sure that they have like their own tier list, but like, yeah. Meanwhile, you have Persona fans. Okay, so even though Persona fans can still be like that, like Persona fans, like, it's still superficial. It's still superficial, right? Because like Persona fans may be like, oh, I fucking hate Persona 4 or something like that, right? But those motherfuckers will still buy Persona 4 Remake, and they will still buy Persona 6. Like, it is superficial in the way that like it literally only happens on like a very like vague section of Twitter. For the most part, people who like Persona like all 3 of the main calendar games. And because they won't release Persona 1 and 2 anywhere else, they haven't played those. But for the most part, most people that play Persona like love Persona. It's like overwhelmingly like it's not to the point of where like I immediately have to ask like what kind of Persona fan you are, because most people that like Persona. DQ fans just love DQ. Yeah, I don't even know like what is like the FF7 of like DQ for like DQ fan. Like what is like, because I don't even know, because DQ fans aren't like, they're not factionalized like that. They're not like, there's not 20 different types of DQ fans, you know? And again, you know, do we blame the fandom for that? Do we blame human nature for that? Or do we blame Square for creating, fostering, and then abandoning different types of fans and telling them, each one of them, that this is a Final Fantasy and that you can like, you know, and that this is the new FF identity, and then change it to something else. And then it's kind of like, okay, well, you know, I really liked what they were doing with Final Fantasy 16. So now you're telling me that 17 is not going to be hack and slash anymore. You're abandoning that again. So, you know, there hasn't been an evolution. And part of the reason is because, let's be honest, you know, 12's combat had mixed reception, and then 13's combat had mixed reception, and then 15's combat has mixed reception, and then 16's combat has like, you know, not as mixed reception, but there's a lot of people that don't like it and a lot of people that do. So it still ends up being polarizing. And Yeah, and then okay, they have like one battle system that ended up being like really well received, and that's Re-Trilogy's battle system, where people are like, "This is the battle, like the best battle system you guys have done." Period. A lot of people feel that way, right? It's like, okay, cool, cool, but then stop fucking factionalizing, please. Let just okay, let that go. Like, please, like, let that like stay. Like, let that be the thing. You know what I'm saying? Because again, how can you create momentum for the broader audience if the core fan base is always never satisfied, right? If you hear one Final Fantasy fan saying it sucked, and you hear another Final Fantasy fan saying it's good, you know, as like a long-time player, I mean, not as a long time, I mean, as someone new, you don't know, like, you just don't know. I do think it's beautiful that like each Final Fantasy resonates with a person in a different way, and I think that that's like a good thing about the series, and like something that should continue to be a thing. But I think that's also an inherent thing in just like, you know, different stories and characters, and like how they present those things, and like the tweaks that they made to the growth systems and the combat. Those were all that was ever needed to distinguish each Final Fantasy game, like from apart from each other, and make it so that like, you know, people would love them or hate them. But you know, like even like classic, you know, FF fans, some may not like eight, for example, but the way that they may not like eight is different from the way that they may not like 15, you know, for example. So if Square doesn't stick with Reach combat for the next 10 years, steadily improving it as time goes on, that might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. That is my tolerance for Square's bullshit. Yeah. I mean, I mean, bro. Yeah. It's just tough to continue to build when every time you pull the rug out from under people, right? So I don't know. I think you can innovate within a system like that. You know, Zelda, for example, is not going to be getting rid of open air anytime soon. The next Zelda game is going to be open air. And so, you know, they said that, like, listen, this is going to be the style of Zelda game going forward. And I think that's cool. They might gatekeep Seven Remakes combat just for Seven Remake. Yeah, I know. That'd be terrible. Imagine they change the combat system and change the game engine again. Yeah, I know, bro. But that's like my biggest fear is that like 17 is just going to like do an entire rug pull, and it's going to be like it's a brand new engine, a brand new combat system. You can only control one character, and like do all the same shit that people were like have been pissed about for like 15 years. And do it again. And I'll be like, oh my fucking god, stop, 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 stop. Speaking of Zelda, do you want more traditional Zelda or Breath of the Wild Zelda more? I like both. I think that there is more potential in the open air Breath of the Wild style Zelda right now. I feel like with traditional 3D Zelda, like they've kind of already done everything you can do. Like I was already feeling it in Twilight Princess. I know a lot of people weren't, but like for me with Twilight Princess, I was already kind of getting there. I was already like, dude, I'm done. Like I'm checking out Canada at this point. I felt like I felt like with Twilight Princess, like I was already like, this is the most you can do with the Ocarina of Time formula, and that's it. And then we got Skyward Sword, and Skyward Sword, I actually liked Skyward Sword. I don't think Skyward Sword was that bad. Some people fucking hate Skyward Sword. I thought it was cool. But like after Skyward Sword though, I like really had Zelda fatigue to the point of where I didn't even play Breath of the Wild for years. I only played it like recently, and I enjoyed it a lot. But like I was like fucking like Breath of the Wild for me, like it was a really cool game. Um, Breath of the Wild was my first Zelda game, and I hated it. I hate the open world and shrines. It felt no different from a Ubisoft game. Yeah, fair, fair. But that's the style of gameplay that they went with, and it blew up. 30 million units sold. I love Wind Waker. I loved Wind Waker too. But yeah, I think the kind of like peak of like traditional 3D Zelda was definitely Twilight Princess, and then from then on, I was kind of like, yeah, this is we got to do something else with Zelda. So I had kind of been feeling that for a while anyway. A mix of both styles would be nice. Yeah, it would be. I personally, I think it'd be cool that because you know how they still do 2D Zelda. Honestly, like I would be a bigger fan if they did like 3D Zeldas, like traditional 3D Zeldas, but they brought like just like a little bit of some of the Breath of the Wild stuff into them, like the different weapons and things like that. Because I hate the fact that like I never really liked the fact that in like most traditional Zelda games, like most of the game was just using the Master Sword or like the basic sword that you get before the Master Sword, then the Master Sword. I was never really a big fan of that progression because I was just like, this sucks because you really don't get that many different weapons, and combat would never be that interesting. And so a lot of that became a lot more interesting in Breath of the Wild. So yeah, I just feel like it'd be a lot more interesting if they kind of take some of those RPG ish elements that they introduced in Breath of the Wild and then made a traditional 3D Zelda as a spin off. For sure. What did you do if SC used Luminous Engine for the next game? That like almost certainly won't happen because there's nobody working on Luminous anymore. I hate the durability system in Breath of the Wild. I kind of like it. I get it. It's there for, excuse me, it's there so that you continue to experiment with different weapons and stuff. Master Sword breaking after 20 hit. Weapon durability, yeah. Well, let me put it like this: weapon durability is cool at first, right? Because it keeps you doing different stuff, and then the problem ends up being that like as the game goes on, like by the time like you're like deep into the game, you're kind of like fucking tired of weapon durability. I think that like the compromise should have been that like you just like I don't know, but yeah, it sucks. Like weapon durability is was like it was good, but then like late game it did get a little tiring. So, but I get why it's there. They should make turn-based Zelda. That would be awesome. What's your best turn-based game? Shit, man, I don't know. My top three turn-based games are Final Fantasy X, Persona 5, and Expedition 33. Probably like my top three favorite turn-based systems, at least that I'm currently thinking of in my head. Dark Cloud, amazing game. Thank you for mentioning that. Dark Cloud fucks, man. That's such a damn good game. So yeah, I don't think turn based is off the table, which is somehow we went off into like a Breath of the Wild, right? I don't think it's off the table. I don't think it's what they should do necessarily because I do think that Re Trilogy's combat is like definitely the way forward. But I do think that that like kind of the mentality that some FF fans have, where it's like it's impossible for them to return to turn based. It'd be like they say that like arbitrarily, and then they don't really have like a good reason for like why they couldn't do it. Like, oh, it limit their sales, but I'm like, no, it wouldn't. Like that is okay. So here's the thing, right? Like, I think that like I think RPGs in general don't sell based off of their combat now. As I've really thought on it, there's a lot of action RPGs, sure, and then there's a lot of 10 plus million seller action RPGs. But like I really got to thinking about how many RPGs like actually sell purely on their combat system. Like that's like the main draw. And as I like really thought about it, I'm like, I don't think there's like a crap ton of like are people like really playing like narrative driven RPGs? I don't think there are, right? Like even The Witcher 3, right? Like people don't play The Witcher 3 for combat, in my opinion. Because combat in The Witcher 3 sucks ass, actually. It's pretty terrible. I don't know. I guess I'm not saying that combat is not like a main draw of RPGs, I guess. But I guess what I'm like really trying to say is that like people play RPGs for a variety of reasons outside of just combat. And so I don't think it's necessary for it to be action. The reason I think that they should continue with re-trilogy style has more to do with the fact that it's like some of the most exceptional RPG combat ever made. More than it does with like uh more than it does with it being action or any preference for action. Witcher 2 combat was arguably worse. That's fucking crazy. Because Witcher 3's combat is like the fucking worst thing ever. And I say that, and I would still like broadly say Witcher 3 is like a GOAT game because of everything else in it. But also, too, like, I mean, I would say about like turn based games that were like really successful, I think, back when I was trying to assess Square's decision to get away from turn based. I'm like, yeah, you look at Pokemon, and Pokemon's not successful because it's turn based. It's successful because it's Pokemon. And that's true. But then I got to thinking, dang, that's also kind of true of like a lot of action RPGs too. It's like the combat is like maybe a small part of just the broader, spectrum of the game, like the broader totality of it. If Square want to cook something interesting for Missing Link, maybe use its story assets to make a animated KH show, as many years rumored. Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, and I mean, like people will say, "Oh, Baldur's Gate 3 wasn't like popular because of its combat," and like maybe true, but like the turn based didn't stop people, I guess, right? It didn't stop people from playing those games, and I think that's like kind of the big point. Although it's really interesting in general that Square Enix had concluded that they needed the switch to action to grow, because if you actually go back and look at it, like, or I should say, move away from turn based, because if you actually go back and look at it, like they left off turn based with their second highest selling game ever, right? Final Fantasy X. So I'm like really curious, like what led them to the conclusion that like the only way for us to sell more, or the only way for us to grow, is that we need to ditch turn based, because they left off with turn based at its like highest point. The most well received battle system in the series up to that point. Um, yeah, I kind of don't get it, honestly. Like it's really weird that that's where they decided, okay, we'll go away from turn based at this point, while it's at its highest point and its most appeal. I guess that they thought that like, okay, if we're at this high of a point with turn based, which is kind of niche, what if we try to make things that aren't as turn based, And so they tried to experiment with things like 12 and 13. Yeah. Turn-based isn't what made people love BG. It was the fact that BG responded to player choice, and the game just had turn-based. Right, but no, that was my point. Is that like, I don't think that like that a game being turn-based would wall it off from being like a high-selling game, right? So yes, will there be people that like buy a game purely because it's turn-based? Probably, like, yeah, sure, but probably a bigger number of people that like will say like, oh, I'm not inherently interested in turn-based, but because you put this other thing in there and you put all these other things in there that are interesting, then I bought it. Giant monkey butt, thank you for the super chat. Blame game journalism at the time. Look what happened in the Lost Odyssey. I do, because Lost Odyssey was an amazing game, and there's no way it should have like a 78 on Metacritic, but that's what it is. I completely agree. And that era really kind of, did a lot of bad for Japanese developers, unfortunately. Yeah, BG's. I do think that like BG being turn based is inseparable from the idea that it responded to player choice, because you can't actually do all the things that BG's turn based battle system allows you to do in an action game. Right? Like it's literally impossible to do that in the confines of an action game. And so um like I do consider like the response to player choice to be inseparable from um the decision to make it turn based, right? Because it being turn based is an extension of your response to player choice. So um yeah, you can activate so many things in BG turn based, right? And like you just can't do that in an action game. It's impossible, literally impossible. And so um, I would say that that interaction is inherently part of it being turn based. You can't say that like, oh, you can make a game that interactive and it be an action game. You can't actually. Like you literally can't. Like it has to be turn based in order for that to all work and come together. And so that, I mean, but like again, here's the thing, right? Like it's not like turn based has been aged out, because people even back then, I say this showing my age, but like people even back then would be like, oh, I don't like turn based games, but I'll play Final Fantasy, right? So I just don't, I don't think that changed. I don't think it changed such that people now won't play. The thing is that yes, you'll probably have to sell them on another aspect, but Final Fantasy used to do that like all the time. It used to like convince people all the time that like, okay, well, you don't like turn based, but like you want to play this really cool cinematic game with great characters and like cool RPG elements and stuff like that. I'm not arguing for like a player choice like CRPG type FF, if that's what you're thinking. Kona DC. I'm just arguing that like that FF turn-based games are always able to sell majorly, even outside of them being turn-based games. They were able uh, to sell to people that normally didn't play turn-based games. Guys, when Final Fantasy VII launched back in 1997, most people didn't fucking play turn-based games or even knew what a JRPG was. And so I do think that like the arguments that people wouldn't play a turn-based game now, I'm like, turn-based games are more loved than they've ever been at any point in history or video game history. So I'm like, why would FF games sell less now when turn-based is like more culturally accepted than ever, both in the West and in Japan? Like the idea that like, I don't know, the idea that like turn-based games would like now suddenly be like off-putting is ridiculous because um, turn-based as a genre is at its peak popularity right now, and not actually when Final Fantasy came out, which is funny. But yeah, people forget that. Even in the 90s, people were saying FF games are boring. I don't like turn based stupid. I'd rather play Castlevania, Mario, or something, even during the height of their popularity. Yeah, exactly. But I think a lot of people, they either don't remember that or they weren't around back then and they came in FF later or something. And so, yeah, they don't remember that being a discussion. So again, I don't think turn based is off the table. I think that yes, the correct way for them to go is the Final Fantasy VII Retrilogy battle system, but a lot of the arguments that even I've made about like why they shouldn't do turn-based anymore, as I've thought on it, I don't think that's like necessarily true. My favorite turn-based, my top three were FF10, Expedition 33, and Persona 5 Royal, or my top three favorite turn-based systems. Yeah, so it's like it's kind of treated like, you know, turn-based games were like uh I don't know. Like the perception that turn-based games can't sell has been like uh broadly considered for a long time. Except instead of like you can do it if you're Pokemon, it used to be you could do it if you're Pokemon or Final Fantasy. But then Final Fantasy decided that it can't do it anymore. But again, even it deciding that was like based on like fucking nothing because like Final Fantasy X again, second highest selling game in the series, like huge success. And then they were like, "Nah, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to do this anymore." And bear in mind that Final Fantasy X series has sold over 20 million units. So just Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy X 2, and the remasters of those games have sold 20 million plus, right? And that's like the last time we got an update on those. And so yeah, I don't actually know where they got that conclusion from. I think um, that it's kind of been false like the whole time. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think that like the only people that actually argue that turn based is boring or outdated are other Final Fantasy fans, and that's like their weird way of supporting the new action system. I think that like most people outside of FF realize that like turn based is a style, an intentional style. Some people like it, some people don't. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's a matter of personal choice. Proof of both Expedition 33 and Persona, the turn base still has a public and great mechanics that beat them all. Like FF16 can bring hack and slash to gamers to FF. The perfect hybridation of both gives us rebirth. Square loses because of the various over titles proposing other styles of gameplay. It's not a bad thing. All these titles push each other forward in terms of development and creativity. Yeah, I think the only bad problem is like the factionalization of the fan base further and further and further, right? I think that's probably the like really, where do I rank Expedition 33 in terms of FF? It's in my S tier with like FF10 and 7. It's up there with like probably my favorite FFs, personally speaking. I think it's a really good game. I really fucking enjoyed it. Really great story, captivating characters, great battle system, great world map. Just a damn good game. Like, amazing. Top of the top of the top of the line. So All right, I think we are going to go ahead and call it a stream, guys. Thank you so much for joining. I will try to make sure that the next stream is not so far away. I know it's been like a month since our last one. Um, well, we're definitely gonna have a stream in like 2 weeks because we got Summer Games Fest, so that's gonna be huge. Look forward to me covering everything on Summer Games Fest for sure, for sure. That's like not even a question. Until then, I'll try to have a stream between Summer Games Fest and now. All right, guys. I love you so much. When Sandfall interview is dropping? Sometime in the next couple of days. Hopefully tomorrow on Saturday. All right. Love you so much. I will